Hello YouTube, today I'll be painting the remaining members of the guild from Wildlands. First up though, you will have seen me using a wet palette recently, and I'll just give a bit of a demo of how I made mine. You can purchase these, different companies make them. The one I've got I've made myself. You can just use a sealable container. I have this safe case I bought years ago for something else, but any Tupperware container or anything like that will be fine. Take a kitchen sponge like this one. This one's perfect for me. It fits perfectly inside my container, but if you got one that doesn't quite fit, you can always cut it down, or if it's a smaller, it doesn't matter. You want the sponge nice and wet. As long as the water isn't flowing over the top of the sponge, you're pretty right. Then I've got some baking paper that I just cut the size. You want to make it a little bit smaller than the sponge itself because it will stretch out a little bit once it's wet. I'm going to measure that up and cut it out. You want it small in the sponge, not just small in the container, because if it overlaps the sponge, it will curl up on the edges. So once we've got that in there, we want to get it nice and wet on both sides. This helps it stretch out, and then once we got it nice and wet on both sides, we're gonna push it down nice and flat. And then once we got it nice and flat, it's gonna take a paper towel. This is one I've been using to wipe my brushes on recently. And we're just gonna dry the top, and that's it, good to go. Palette is ready. This helps keep the paint from drying out and remain workable, usually for a few days at least. I generally only change the baking paper once I've run out of room for more paint. Sometimes this can be weeks later. I base coat Hugo's robes with Imperial Blue. I'm not trying to get a nice even coat here, I'm just kind of laying it on. This colour will take at least 2 coats to cover the black primer, so this first coat is going to be a little patchy anyway. While this mini doesn't exactly match the artwork, we can see that it's an owl that has blue robes, so I'm making these robes vibrant to make this mini pop. The Wildlands game boards are quite bright and full of colour, so I'll try to make these minis stand out. To start brightening up the robes, I mix sky blue with Imperial Blue to create a mid-tone. This is then applied, leaving the base coat of Imperial Blue in the recesses. Then I highlight the raised areas with sky blue. I could have left it here, and this wasn't really required, but I gave the robe a glaze of thinned down Imperial Blue to help smooth out the transitions between colours. I kept the feathers pretty simple, painting them with burnt umber and then just dry brushing on the highlights. The eyes are actually sculpted nicely on this mini, so I paint the eyes before I dry brush the highlights. This way, if I get a little bit messy with the eyes, I can just touch it up with a little burnt umber and won't have to highlight it again. I carefully paint the eyes yellow and then dot them with black, keeping the dot close to the top eyelid. I try not to dot the center of the eye, as this can often lead to the mini having a surprised look. With the eyes done, I create a highlight for the feathers by mixing pale sand with burnt umber and then dry brush it on. Rather than focus on just this mini, I will also highlight some of the techniques I used on the rest of the minis in this faction. Garen's game artwork shows him holding a glowing ball of magic. I try to replicate this on the mini. I start by stippling deep sky blue on the areas I think the light from the ball will hit. This is pretty much just lightly stabbing at the area with the dry brush. I mix deep sky blue with some white to create a highlight. Then, using a cheap makeup sponge, I wipe the majority of the paint off on a paper towel. Then lightly dab at the areas closest to the ball. This is my first time trying this technique with the sponge, but it seems to work pretty well. Don't be afraid to try new things. The beauty of paint is that you can always paint over the top of areas and mistakes or colours that you're not happy with. And if it's real bad, you can just strip all the paint off and go again. Finally, I glazed the area with Imperial Blue and highlighted the ball with white. To paint Lunk's grey armour, I use mixes of white, neutral grey and black. I start with a base coat of neutral grey, Black is then mixed with the neutral grey and painted into the recesses. White is then mixed with neutral grey and painted onto the highlight areas. Finally, straight white is used as an edge highlight at the most extreme points. The brown armor plates were done in the same way, starting with deep brown, then adding black for the shadows and white for the highlights. And they're done! That's the guild faction finished. The old witch mini scheme was pretty simple, so I left it out of this video. These minis were fun to paint, the schemes were pretty dark though. The other factions in the game have brighter colour schemes, so I'm looking forward to tackling them next time. Thanks for watching.